Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Just Another Esports podcast. Once again, joined by me, your host, Nicholas Shady Bacon, and my co host, Mr. Kevin Hubers. I know I promised a special guest. We were going to have Mr. Josh Salvation's Elite. However, he is not feeling well today. So, unfortunately, we will miss him surely, and he will not be a part of this episode. But we wish him all the best and a speedy recovery for him. But we do have the champs prediction. This entire episode is going to be dedicated to champs predictions. It's not going to be split up into two parts how it was last year, simply because we get it over one weekend this year. So I guess that's a good change in format since it was a bit weird kind of having it divided up between weekends last year. Um, there are still some questions up in the air around what rosters are going to be at Champs. The biggest one in the air being Optic, simply because Scump and Envoy are still testing positive for COVID as of Sunday before Champs. And so they only have 4 more days to be able to test negative. Otherwise, they will not be able to compete. And General and Sender will be subbed in for that roster. And so all of our predictions are going to be based around the roster that the teams want being the one that competes. Simply because if a team does has to make a substitution due to COVID or due to some external reason, more than likely they're not going to be able to win the matches or any match up against the teams that are going to be competing at champs. So we'll probably touch on that briefly when we get to that match and our prediction for it, but just wanted to do that as a pre-warning. As of right now, I don't think any of the other teams have players testing positive for COVID from that stage 5 major, and so I believe they're all set and ready
Nos
to
la
go
pelaron,
for
hijos de la
champs.
chingada.
But just a disclaimer there at the start, I don't think there's any other news. So without further ado, let's jump in to the first matchup that we have: Dallas Empire versus Minnesota Rocker.
I gotta be honest, Nick. This one's kind of tough, right? Because literally, what just happened? Major Five, Minnesota Rocker come out on top. It's LAN. It's it's recent, which means there is recency bias. Dallas, on the other hand, has been looking just as mean. They've been a little bit more consistent, both online and in LAN. And if they can figure out a couple little hiccups, I think that they're in the running to take the whole thing.
Yeah, so over the course of the season, Dallas has definitely had a more impressive season than Minnesota. That's why they are the third seed overall going into champs. Minnesota Rocker, they clutched up and were able to maintain their sixth seed. Dallas, been a better hardpoint team all year than the Minnesota Rocker. Their full hardpoint record is 44-31. Minnesota, on the other hand, is a 25-39. Where these teams balance out a bit is definitely when you get to that S&D gameplay. Minnesota Rocker was extremely solid at the start of the year in S&D, and then they started to taper off towards the middle, and they picked it back up again towards the end. You look at their S&D record for the whole season, 29-21. Dallas Empire, 34-30. So a bit difference in the number of repetitions there, simply because Dallas has gone further at a bunch of the majors than Minnesota. Then we get to the control. And this is another one where actually Minnesota has a leg up on the Dallas Empire. Minnesota's record in control is 24-15. Meanwhile, Dallas Empire is 24-23. That's over the course of the whole season. Dallas, over the course of the season, has been the better team than Minnesota. However, like, it is extremely important to take that stage 5 into account. And so for that, I've actually created a separate Excel sheet that only has the teams at champs and their records versus those teams over the course of stage 4 and stage 5, since that is kind of the latter half of the season and probably the more important part that we look at to determine what we're going to see at champs. What happened at the beginning of the season doesn't matter too much. You can have a hot start to the season, you can fall off and not perform at champs. We've seen that last year with Florida, where they had a miraculous May through June, I do believe, and then they fell off drastically come July, and then in August at champs, they didn't really do much of all. So looking at kind of their stage 4 and 5, it's very similar. Dallas still has a leg up on Minnesota in the respawn. Surprisingly, the KD differential is actually kind of interesting here because Dallas on average against the other teams at champs in hard points is at a 0.91 with a 16 and 13 record in hard points. Meanwhile, Minnesota Rocker with a 9 and 13 record in hard point has on average a KD of 1.01. So like a whole 0.10 better in the respawn KD. However, the record does not show it having 7 less wins than the Dallas Empire up against the champs teams. And Minnesota actually, though, best S&D team that we have at champs. You thought it would have been FaZe? You're wrong. Minnesota Rocker is the best S&D team we have at champs, at least up against other champs teams. They're 11-6 in S&D. FaZe 8-6, and Dallas Empire they're 11-11. And then Control, Minnesota Rocker they're 7-7. Dallas is 8-8. So more recent times, Dallas has actually gotten better, and Minnesota seems to be a bit more 50-50, at least up against kind of the champs teams which they're going to be facing. And so we kind of really do have to look at the matchups and the depth. It is a best of 5, so the depth of these teams isn't going to play as much of an effect since they can ben out good maps for the other team or bad maps for themselves, and their weaknesses aren't going to be as exploitable if they have at least some depth to their map pool, as would be different for the best of 9 series. And so we kind of have to look at the matchup here in the hard points and the S&Ds and the controls. Who's going to take what and why? And
so okay, I like that. So with Dallas and Minnesota, we both select like who's going to take the hard points, who's going to take the searches.
Yeah, kind of how we think it is going to play out. Because at least for the Dallas Empire, I see one clear advantage for them in hard points, and that's Garrison. They're 7-2 on that map. It's by far their best hard point map in stage 4 and 5, and even throughout the entirety of the season. Meanwhile, Minnesota Rocker, they don't really have a glaring strength or weakness in hard point, maybe outside of that Garrison or maybe their Moscow, where they have a 3-6 record on Garrison and 0-2 record on Moscow. So once you eliminate the Garrison, you're going to a Moscow. Dallas could probably take that up against Minnesota. But then the other one, it's definitely 50-50 for these teams. And so then you kind of have to shift your focus to the S&D. But without like kind of boring people too much with a bunch of the analytics, I think one thing for me critically that is going to determine who's going to take this match is, and something that I don't think a lot of people have talked about, is Shotzzy. Shotzzy had a terrible stage 5.
Yeah.
Which was one of the reasons Dallas dropped out. I think it was like top 6 or whatever. That was the first time Shotzzy had played in front of a crowd since Modern Warfare. And we all remember that Shotzzy was not an insanely crazy good player during Modern Warfare when they had a crowd in front of them. It was once they moved to online that we started to see this evolution in Shotzi's gameplay. And then come champs, he was one of the best players in the game. Stage 4, they were on LAN. He did insanely well. He'd done insanely well the entire season. They moved back stage 5 major in front of a crowd on LAN. He underperforms. We're going to have a live audience at champs. Are we going to see the same issues that we've seen with Shotzzy when he plays in front of a large crowd? I think that's this is an incredibly interesting storyline that could come up. And so
yeah, I mean,
for that reason, and for kind of the differences in the map pool and kind of the matchup there, I think Minnesota, I'm going to give this matchup to Minnesota. I'm going to say Minnesota takes it 3-2 over Dallas Empire.
Yeah, I think you're right. Honestly, Minnesota's just like the better team.
Okay,
yeah,
dang.
No, absolutely. First of all, I think Dallas is kind of in a rut right now, and I don't know if there's going to be anything that's going to save them, especially if Shotzzy plays how he just played what, a couple of weeks ago. I mean, this is this is now when recency bias is a little bit out the window, and we know that um, Shotzi is going to be one of those guys that if he can't get it together, I mean, the pressure's on him already. You got to feel it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm a bit surprised that you agreed with me there. So missing Josh already. I know he would have definitely disagreed with that point with our take on that matchup there. But what can you do? We'll move on to the next matchup that we do have for Thursday. It is going to be Optic Chicago versus the New York Subliners. So Subliners, Clay reintegrated back into that roster. That was announced. He's been practicing with them for I think about 2 weeks now. Chicago, we're going to be assuming Envoy and Scump are going to be playing with them because if General and Sender get subbed in, I don't see them realistically being New York Subliners. So we'll make those assumptions going into this matchup, and I'll toss it off to you.
Um, hmm. Let's see. All right. So Placer's back, and during the major, I was really high on him, right? But the uh, now that that Champs is here, a little bit closer. I think I might. I don't know. I might give it to Optic. I don't know. Like Scump and Envoy just had COVID. Even if they are able to play, like you got to think that Clay's been taking a break. He hasn't been practicing with the team. They've been playing with Diamond Con. Who knows how they're going to perform? It's just there's so many variables that are up in the air with this. I think it's going to be a close one. No, I actually don't think it's going to be that close. I think it's going to be 3-1 Optic. Honestly.
3-1 Optic.
Yeah. I think that Optic's smart enough to have a decent hardpoint game. I think they've worked on it pretty hard this last little stretch. They're a decent enough search team to get by, and they really don't want to bring it to a search if you're in that position. I think you chalk the first search, you control. I think Optic's doing a little bit better. So, um, yeah. So I think I'm giving it to Optic 3-1.
Yeah, I'm more than likely going to agree with you, simply because when we did see Clay initially, it was kind of that stage 3. I'm looking at this New York roster through the same lens of that Florida Mutineers roster from last season, where they had an incredible mid-season high. They did amazing. That in this New York Subliners roster, they weren't able to pick up championships as that Florida Mutineers roster was last season, but we're seeing kind of that similar thing where they did really good in mid-season and then they tapered off and they weren't really able to do anything at champs. And that could very well be what we see with this New York Subliners roster, especially due to the break that Clayster did take. Now, I usually wouldn't mind a player taking kind of a break from the game and then reintegrate themselves within the team. However, this was kind of a full cutoff from everything leading into champs. I mean, you can have a player sit on the sidelines and still be with the team and talk with the team and engage with them, so that they're not kind of fully mentally checked out and they're not missing kind of any important insight or kind of team conversations that are happening. But this guy, he booked a flight, went to Fiji for like a week or something, and then comes back and tries to reintegrate himself like that. That you can't just immediately reintegrate yourself in with a team. When you do that, you're coming from like not thinking about Call of Duty at all to immediately being in kind of full mode, full champs mode, where players are kind of at their highest focus on the game.
Right.
So that for me is like a big issue in why I don't think we're going to see the same New York. Now we could see an insanely refreshed, refurbished New York. I, I just don't see that happening. We haven't seen it yet in Call of Duty where someone just takes a 100% break from the game and then comes back and is able to perform with the team. And we've seen a lot of their struggles. I mean, we were touting this New York Subliners roster at one point as the best hardpoint team in the game when they were going on that like 11 game win streak or whatever in hardpoint. Since then, though, stage 4 and 5 up against champs teams, they have a 5-13 record. They're the worst hardpoint team currently at champs. And that's insane to say when we were looking at stage 3 and being like, this team's unbeatable in hardpoint. And it doesn't look much better for them in Search and Destroy or Control. Search and Destroy, oddly enough, being their best game mode currently. That's Optic's worst. So if they do get it to the game 5, it's like that's where you have New York with the best chance of winning. But I don't see them being able to get past this Optic Gaming roster. Like they might be able to split the hard points. They'll probably, like, if they split the hard points, I think they'll split the searches, and then it comes down to that control. And this Optic roster up against champs teams, they're 4-2 on Checkmate. They have not played Garrison against any of these teams, and they're 4-2 on Raid. So they're 8-4 total on control, which is the second best record statistically that we have currently for the champs teams in that mode. And so barring no COVID complications with this Optic Gaming roster, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say it's going to be a 3-1 Optic over the New York Subliners.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most reasonable scenario. Because if it goes to game 5, I'm gonna put it on Clay to take that.
Yeah, I just want to take a look at their S&D matchup really quickly to see kind of what's going on there. So, yeah, if it does, let's see here. So, neither of these teams are insane at S&D. I think we can just leave it at that. It seems like they're pretty equal on most maps. Both are 2-3 on Express. Subliners are 1-2 on Miami. Optics 0-2. They're both 1-1 on Moscow. Raid, they're both 0-2. And then Standoff Optics 2-2 and Subliners are 3-1. So not too much of a difference there. If we look at the season standings, it's definitely going to be a bit different. Optics over the course of the whole season's been better in S&D, but a lot of that was off of their Checkmate S&D, which was I think they were around the best team in the game on that map and mode. But moving into elimination round 1. First matchup we have down here in the losers bracket is the Dallas Empire up against the LA Thieves. This one, I'm going to have to give it to Dallas.
Yeah, for sure. Like, there's no way that these knock out Dallas right here, right now.
Yeah, that would be probably the most disappointing placement from Crim6 ever at a champs. I feel like his head would probably explode if he lost to the Thieves here.
He would sacrifice Shotzi to the devil right there.
Oh yeah, that'd definitely be interesting. So pretty much Dallas, your game plan up against LA Thieves. They just have to ban Checkmate. Hardpoint Thieves, they ban Checkmate, or they ban Garrison Hardpoint. That leaves us Moscow Raid and Apocalypse. Both these teams are pretty solid fundamental teams, I think. I mean, you have Slasher at the helm on LA Thieves, and then you have Crim6 at the command on the Dallas Empire. So not going to see, I think, too much craziness out of either of these rosters. But the big kind of leg up that Dallas Empire have over the LA Thieves is that the LA Thieves are just absolutely fucking awful at control.
Yeah.
John does not know how to play that game mode at all, apparently, because their roster is 1-8 in control. They're above and beyond the worst control team in the game. They have their sole win in control is on Checkmate. They're 0-5 on Garrison and 0-2 on Raid. So I'm definitely going to have to give the control win over to the Dallas Empire. And so for that, even if they split the hard points and the S&Ds, because of that control win, I see Dallas taking it. So in the end, I'm going to say Dallas Empire probably take it 3-2 over the LA Thieves. Are you saying a 3-2? Or are you saying a 3-1 or 3-0?
Probably 3-0, honestly. I think like if Dallas loses this here or loses to Minnesota here, like they're gonna be pretty pissed. They're gonna take it out on the Thieves.
Yeah, they will have been warmed up. So since these matches are on the same day, moving into the final elimination match that we do have on that Thursday, it's Subliners versus Mutineers. I kind of just want to skip all the stats here and just say New York take this simply because they've been Florida with a substitute 2 times in a row now.
Yeah, that's true.
Mutineers, they've kind of just been stat padding the whole seasons by beating down the Gorillas, like just over and over again. I think they played them around 6 times over the course of the season. They played them 4 times between stage 4 and 5 and beat them every time. And so I feel like a lot of our looks at Florida and their overall stats have just been like, oh, wow, this team's good. How come they aren't winning so much? Well, you look at kind of the people that they've been beating repeatedly, and it's the, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th place teams that aren't going to be at champs. So
Yeah, I mean, like the Mutineers are probably not gonna win champs. I think they have the lowest odds out of anybody. Um, like they're not winning it, and this is coming from somebody who's a Mutineers fan. Literally, the only skin that I bought during Cold War was a Mutineers skin. Same in Modern Warfare. Like, I mean, like they couldn't even beat. Yeah, they couldn't even beat the substitute team. What? What? Like Clayster took a break and they were still like, yeah, we can still beat Florida. Like it'll be all right.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know what you want me to say. Like I would probably say this goes like a 3-2 or something. I'll say that Florida's wanting to play their hearts out. You know.
yeah, I was going to say it's a 3-2 as well. Both of the times they've faced them, it's got to that game 5, but Subliners have been able to pull it out with the S&D victories. I think New York's probably weakest game mode in at champs is going to oddly enough be their hard point, and so it's going to be on the backs of kind of their search to really kind of pull them through in these series, especially against a team like the Mutineers, who I feel is kind of they're able to pull some wizardry out of their hat in their hard points every now and then, where they just have skies go off, or Neptune's able to play his life really well and they clutch up, or Awakening awakens. So
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. This could be the exit for the subliners here, but I think I don't know. I just don't see it happen, honestly.
yeah, with the history in the last 2 majors of New York and Florida, it would maybe be on brand for Florida to pull out the win here after we discount them because they've lost to the substitute roster of New York Subliners the past 2 majors. But I'm gonna stick with my gut. I'm gonna go New York 3-2 over the Subliners. Or over the Mutineers. I missed the Battle of the Pizza reference for Chicago versus New York. I'm so sad, but
Dang.
that happened.
You have to just bring them both to
So I'll
grand
have to throw
finals.
it in there. Moving into Friday, we have Toronto versus the Minnesota Rocker. And the last time these teams faced off in a best of 5, it was a swift exit for Toronto from that series in 3-0 fashion. Do we see that happen again?
No. I don't know.
Is Toronto scared of Minnesota now?
Yeah, that's the thing you got to think of
They
too.
just got super ultra reverse swept by them.
Yeah, literally in a best of 9 reverse swept. The fullest of full sales. Yeah, I don't know.
You got to think it can't happen again, right? Minnesota Rocker, like their S&D. The thing with Rocker 2 and S&D is that they have a double threat. They're 4-0 on Miami up against champs teams, and they're 4-2 on raid. So they have a double threat. They're going to get one of those maps. It's which map does Toronto want to play them on? And I mean, we look at them, they're 0-2 on raid currently for S&D, even though that I think over the course of the season, that was one of their better S&D maps. Yeah, they're 10-2 on raid over the course of like the entire season. So they've had 2 losses. They haven't won it since stage 3, I guess, for raid S&D. And they've only played it twice against champs teams, which is crazy. Between stage 4 and 5, over the course of 2 stages, they've only played it twice against champs teams, and they've lost both times. And then Miami, they're 5-5. So, I mean, realistically, you would have to think Toronto bans Miami, and then they play raid, and hopefully they're able to kind of reawaken the magic that they had with that raid search over the course of the season. And then, I mean, they're pretty darn good. It looks at like at Express over the course of the season with a 7-2 record, but then you look kind of, and in recency too, they are pretty good on it with a 3-1 record. So they split the S&Ds. I'm thinking maybe. I honestly think this probably goes to a game 5 as well.
Yeah. I just don't know who to give it to.
Because I could see Toronto taking both hard points. It's once it gets to that control where maybe Minnesota is able to do something. I'm strictly banning Garrison control against Minnesota. Minnesota's 6-2 on that map. So I would much rather play them on checkmate or raid, since I mean Toronto's been a double threat on Garrison and raid over the course of the season. So I'm thinking you just have it default to checkmate probably, since I don't think Minnesota's going to want to play Toronto on raid control.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Toronto takes it 3-2 over Minnesota. I think it could be a 3-1 actually.
Yeah, it could be.
The big difference here, even though Minnesota, like recency would say, oh, this team's incredibly crazy. You also have to think like, okay, teams weren't really worried about Minnesota at that major. They weren't looking at them like, oh, this is an insanely good team. We have to prep for them. Maybe towards the end they were like that, but you only had a couple days worth. You only had like a day to prep for them. So now they've had 3-ish weeks to prep for this team that could be dangerously good. And so I don't see anyone taking them lightly. And therefore, I don't think we're going to see a repeat of what we did see at that stage 5, at least in this Toronto Rocker matchup.
Yeah, likely not. I mean, Minnesota has been doing really well. I think I think Toronto just has it. And I could see a 3-1, honestly. I mean, I think that Toronto's hard points one of the best in the game.
Yeah. Toronto is a solid hard point team, which was why it was so weird to see them lose. Well, I guess they only dropped 1 hard point to Minnesota. They won the first 2. But in that, what was the hard point they played them on when they played the best of 5, the first best of 5 that Minnesota 3-0'd them on? Do you remember?
Um,
I'm gonna check real quick. Because it wasn't Apocalypse. That was the one they lost the second time they faced off. It was a checkmate. But they only lost by 25 points. And they got outslayed by 7. So that sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna favor Toronto in the hard points as well. Just looking at it.
yeah, I mean, just watching them, they're better.
Yeah. Up next, we have Atlanta FaZe versus Optic Chicago. Who's pulling out the dub?
FaZe 3-1.
Phase 3-1.
Yeah, it's still FaZe versus Optic. Like, they ain't shit.
I know. I know. I mean, last time they faced off, Optic won. And then you look at that stage 5 major. I mean, our cities is looking for 8s, so maybe FaZe is getting a little nervous. Who knows?
Maybe. I doubt it, though. Seriously.
Yeah. And the thing with this Optic matchup is Optic, like FaZe has just been disgusting at the hard points. Definitely the best hard point team we have at champs, which is why it was so impressive that Seattle was able to take 2 off of them. And then their control is untouchable, realistically. Like that's what it comes down to. If Optic can't take the control off of FaZe, which has kind of been the one game mode that's been really hotly contested between the two every single series, then it's 100% going to go to Atlanta FaZe, probably in 3-1 fashion, since I imagine Toronto or FaZe will take at least one of the hard points, and they'll probably take that first S&D.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna say it's a 3-2 FaZe over Optic, simply because Optic usually comes in with a bit of a upgraded form. I think come champs, we've kind of seen that over the past couple of seasons, I do believe, and so I think we'll see that again at this champs, where they're able to maybe put up a bit better of a fight here in this matchup against FaZe, but giving it to FaZe in the end. I think currently the only upset you and I have here is Rocker taking a win over Dallas.
I don't even think that's really an upset either, you know?
Yeah, I mean, some might not consider. I feel like the majority of people, unless they're going extreme recency, would consider that an upset simply because of the kind of consistency we've seen from Dallas long term over the course of the season as compared to kind of the short term success that we've seen from the Minnesota Rocker during that stage 5 major.
Right.
But if Optic, if they have to play with General and Center, I don't see them beating New York. So that could be maybe not an upset once we know if they're able to play or not. But yeah, that's what would happen there, at least going back to that older prediction. But this loss here for Chicago sets them up nicely to immediately play Dallas in the losers bracket. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I feel like FaZe just takes this. So I mean, I don't think there's a discussion, but the Dallas of Optic discussion, I want to talk about that. That would be very nice.
Okay. Well, let's get some. The last time they faced, Optic 3-1 them.
Yeah, convincingly.
Yes, convincing 3-1. If we're looking at their season stats in hardpoint, these teams are pretty much about as equal as you can get. Optic, they're 42-31 in hardpoints. Dallas, they're 44-31. If we're just looking at the champs matchup, Dallas has a few more reps than Optic in hardpoint, looking at 16-13. Optic Chicago at 11-9. The glaring maps here, Dallas is Garrison, they're 7-2, and Chicago is Moscow, 6-1. So I'm thinking Dallas probably I'm thinking they probably banned that Moscow, and then Optic banned the Garrison. But I feel like every time these teams have faced off, they've left those maps open to play.
Yeah, I think they're like ego challenge each other. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe Dallas bans Checkmate instead, because I mean that's another of Optic's good maps. They're 11-4 on the season, but against champs teams they're only 2-3. So a bit of a difference in kind of their record there.
Yeah. I don't know. I really do think that Dallas might get dethroned here, and this would just be pretty sweet as far as storylines go. Like, I'm not an
I
Optic
mean, this
fan.
would be a top 5, 6 for Dallas. It'd be a stage 5 major all over again.
Might be the early exit, honestly. Depends. I mean, the boys are healthy, then Optic can do it.
Do you think we might be downplaying Dallas too much?
I mean, recency
I mean,
bias does have us.
even looking back at that Minnesota series.
I don't know.
Because Dallas, they are another of those teams that seems to just play different at champs.
Yeah, we'll
I mean,
see.
we remember last champs
Yeah,
back in Modern Warfare.
maybe.
Dallas looked like an insanely different team. How they had kind of the whole season. They just looked so much more prepared than any other team at that champs, and they were able to play FaZe, who was just a dominant force, like a fiddle.
Yeah.
Dang. Yeah. There's no slouches, no boring matchups at this champs. Definitely not.
Yeah, I mean, well, other than getting the Florida stuff out of the way, Florida LA Thieves matchup out of the way. I mean, I don't think either of those teams have the
Yeah.
type of
So even
gumption.
if Chicago take both of the hard points, you have to look at Dallas's record uh, in S&D, at least over the course of the stage 4, stage 5, and be like, yeah, Dallas is the much better S&D team. I mean, you're looking at Optic, they're 5-10 in S&D. They're of the champs teams, they have the worst record against other champs teams. Over the course of the season, that's different. Yes, they're not nearly as bad. They're 30-26, and Dallas is 34-30. So they both won 4 more than they have lost. And I mean, you look at their overall round records, Optics at 51.25% overall round wins, and Dallas is at an even 50% overall round wins.
Yeah.
But then you kind of look at the more recency stuff, and Dallas has been better than Optic between stage 4 and stage 5. And so you're looking, okay, well, Optic, they take both hard points. Dallas, they take both SMDs. Who takes the control? And that's kind of what a lot of these have come down to. And Optic, they're banning Garrison 100%. Like, that's obvious. That's their glaring weakness at controls, that they're 100% banning Garrison. Good thing for them, though, is that they're a double threat in that, with a 4-2 record on Checkmate and then a 4-2 on Raid against other champs teams. And that doesn't differentiate much if you're looking at on the season. I mean, they're 17-8 on Raid, and then they're 11-8 on Checkmate with 1 loss on Garrison. So it's probably going to go to that Checkmate control again, since that seems to be what Dallas goes to up against Optic the majority of the time. And so
Yeah. I mean, I think that Optic definitely plays a much better control than Dallas, and that's usually like like this is the one that Optic gets to win, and then after that it's a little
Dallas always
downhill.
pulls some magical shit out of their ass, though, in control. Like, I mean, they got on the point with 0.1 seconds left, and then they're like, that's too much time. So they got on the point with 0 seconds left. I don't think they won that round, but still, it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was kind of nuts.
So what are you saying? You saying Optic 3-2 over Dallas? Because I think that's what I'm going
Yeah,
to go with.
that's basically the only thing you can do. I think that Optic takes this. They're healthy, boys are healthy, then you're good. So it's gonna be
Yeah.
it's gonna be the better storyline anyway. I mean, I really don't want to see
I
Dallas
feel
repeat.
weird about it. I just feel like I'm downplaying Dallas too much, simply because of their bad stage 5 showing. But I mean,
Right.
I guess I just have to keep on reminding myself, Shotzi in front of a crowd hasn't shown up yet. So that's a bit, I guess, of relief.
He's an onliner.
At least ease off the mind. Yeah. Elimination round 2, the second matchup, we got Minnesota Rocker versus Subliners. It's got to be Minnesota, right? Or does it?
Um, Hmm. Maybe. I don't know. If you say Minnesota, then I'll disagree. How about that?
I don't know. I got to give it a look see. But while I give it a look see, I guess in the stats, why are you, I guess, going with New York over Minnesota?
I mean, Clay's back, right? You know, Clay. He's been in this position more than just about everybody else. I think he's got a good team around him, and I would imagine that this would be his opportunity to make it happen again. So, don't get me wrong, Minnesota's a great team, but I don't think they could beat a Clayster. You know,
Yeah, so Minnesota has only played New York twice the entire season. The first time around, it was a 3-0 for New York over Minnesota. The second time around, which was in the latter half of the season, it was a 3-0 for Minnesota over New York. So both of these teams have 3-0'd each other. The difference is New York 3-0'd Minnesota at the start of the season and Minnesota 3-0'd New York at the end of the season. I do believe this was this at the major? Was this at stage 4 major? I don't. It was at the stage 4 major. I do believe. Yeah, it was at the stage 4 major where New York got 3-0'd by Minnesota. So that was without ASIM, with Decimate.
hmm.
Yes, this is definite a
I mean, I'm still going with Clayster. He's proven.
Going with Clayster.
Going with Clay.
Taking down the stage 5 champs.
Putting the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, I don't want to put faith in Brian Saint's team. I just don't. I don't feel good about doing that. But I don't realistically see how New York, a team that's struggled in control all year long and isn't the best S&D team up against one of the best S&D teams currently at champs, and who has also been struggling in hardpoint as of recently, is going to be able to beat a Minnesota Rocker team that, unless they overlook New York, should have all the confidence in the world that they'll take the dub here. So I'm going to say Rocker 3-1 over Subliners.
Wow. Unbelievable. I'm giving it to New York 3-2. It's gonna be a good one.
3-2 over New York
Yeah.
or over Minnesota. Yeah, I feel like maybe we should have tried to get Shady Nero in here to argue his point on why he thinks subliners are going to pop off at champs, because he seemed very annoyed with Josh and Sam's placement of New York at champs.
No, I think
But
I
I
think they
mean,
got it.
realistically, you look at kind of what they've done recently, and even with Clay out and then coming back in, like there's just so many factors to it that I can't in good faith give New York the win here. Although who knows? It's champs, crazy stuff's happened. It's bound to happen again, you know. We don't have the coin here to guide us through the craziness, so
Rip the coin. That's how
let's
JCast's been
see.
making roster changes too.
Uh, no, I think he has a wheel he spins.
Fucking
It's definitely been a
dartboard.
bit more. It's been a bit more random than a coin. Yeah, yeah. He's been throwing darts at a dartboard, and none of them have hit.
Yeah, that would even hit the board. He's got a dartboard.
It's just hitting players, and he's like, "Oh, I guess you're in this time."
Oh, that was my
uh,
shooting hand. Oh, you won't need it.
All right. Well, winners finals is the first matchup we have on Saturday. It's going to be Atlanta FaZe versus the Toronto Ultra. Who do you think's going to take it? It's
FaZe.
the
It's
classic
good.
finals.
It's gonna be a hard fought battle. It's gonna be FaZe. It's gonna be 3-2.
3-2 FaZe.
Yeah, Toronto can fight through losers. FaZe has got this.
Yeah, I will probably agree with that.
I mean, people were like, "Oh yeah, FaZe was selling or whatever." I'm pretty sure that they threw Major Five because it didn't matter, and they're still the best team in the league, and it's not even close.
I think it's close with Toronto, maybe not some of the other teams.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong, Toronto's good, but I mean, like, FaZe is just better, objectively.
Yeah, I'm liking what I'm seeing from Toronto in search though.
Their search and destroy is good. Don't get me wrong.
They did drop a ton of them to Minnesota though. But Minnesota, as we said, is against champs teams between stage 4 and 5 is the best S&D team. But I can't see FaZe losing 2 searches, although crazier things have happened. Yeah, I guess a little history. These teams have faced a lot, and Toronto has not been FaZe outside of the stage 2 major where they beat them in the winners. No, they beat them in the grand finals after they lost to them in the winners finals. But going into their match history, FaZe has been disgusting on control over the course of the season. Neither of these teams really ever play checkmate at all. So that could be a fun curveball Toronto could throw Atlanta FaZe if they wanted to. I don't think that would ever happen. I think FaZe probably would FaZe ban it. I don't know because I'm not actually sure how these teams control vetoes go because both of them are good on Garrison and both of them are good on Raid. Uh, FaZe being better on, I guess, both of those maps with a 19-4 record on Garrison and a 15-3 record on Raid. But then you have Toronto who's 13-6 on Garrison and 16-9 on Raid. So not sure how the vetoes go there, but it could be fun to see these two teams face off on a checkmate control. That could be a cool curveball.
Oh, for sure.
Search and destroy. Yeah, I mean, FaZe, they need to figure out standoff because they have not figured that map out yet. And they haven't really figured out express that well either. And then Miami, most teams don't like playing Miami. There's a couple at champs that will play it. I mean, Minnesota Rocker being one of them, Dallas being the other. And that is also one of FaZe's weaker maps. They were definitely a stronger S&D team when they still had Checkmate in the mix. Once Checkmate got removed, I mean, you're looking at their Moscow and their Raid are their only really solid S&D maps out of the 5 currently, and they've lost Moscow both times they've played it as of recently after kind of not being able to play that against teams for the longest time. And so that takes us to the hard points.
I mean,
I
I don't
think the
know.
FaZe Toronto matchup comes down to hardpoint, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I think the whole matchup comes on submachine gun duos because the AR skill gap is realistically not that crazy. Um, for anybody, like even the best ARs and the worst ARs are still about the same. It just depends on who cameras who. In all seriousness, so so knowing that, I think that it'll come down to the subs because there's a lot bigger skill difference. And while Kleenex and Cammy are great, I think Cammy he's been more consistent as of late. He's still inconsistent. And Kleenex, kind of lives or dies by playing like more of a rat. But Simp and Abizi don't fall for the ratty plays, you know. Celium doesn't fall for the ratty plays,
Isn't
you
that
know.
because Celium is the rat?
Celium is the rat, 100p. So
He's like the brood mother, or I don't know, he's the source.
yeah, yeah, he's the snake, he's the rat, he's the guy who just has the better movement. So
So you're
um
giving it phase 3-2 over
yeah,
Toronto?
I'm giving it phase 3-2 over Toronto.
Okay. I think I'm going to be inclined to agree with that. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Phase 3-2 over Toronto. So moving in to elimination round 3, we have Minnesota Rocker versus Optic Chicago. Minnesota Rocker, they beat the top 3 teams to get first at the Stage 5 major. They beat FaZe, they beat Dallas, and then they beat Toronto twice. But you know who they didn't play?
Who did they not play?
They didn't play Optic. So these teams, it's interestingly enough, they probably have the two. Minnesota Rocker, they got a fan base. I mean, it's not in Minnesota, so obviously Optic's gonna have more fans as they always do. But
Yeah.
Minnesota, their fans, they aren't slouches. They got a decent following. They got some people to cheer for them. I mean, definitely. I mean, anywhere Toronto goes, they're obviously they don't have any fans because you're gonna get those annoying ass U.S. chants no matter where they go because they're a Canadian team,
Yeah,
quote
God
unquote,
forbid. They're a Canadian, yeah, quote
quote
unquote.
unquote. um, so
They got
tough
that belt
crowd for
fiber though.
them. But yeah, Minnesota versus Optic Chicago. Who we got going on to the elimination final to face Toronto? It's tough because Optic's not looking good at search. Maybe they pull some miracle out of their hat and they don't lose to the Rocker
Yeah, I
in
think
game
I think the
5.
Rocker could upset right here.
I think they could. I think it very well might. But I got an inkling of faith. And this is still all barring Scump and Envoy are able to play.
Yeah, true. Like this would be a crazy finish if Scump and Envoy are actually playing. What if General and Cinder like just body somebody? Like how crazy would that be?
I mean, I have faith in general to do some stuff, but Sender, nothing against him, but he hasn't played professionally for a while, and he
Yeah.
might jump into the lobbies with the boys every now and then. But
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, who don't? Maybe it could have huge implications. They got the coach in the game now, being able to coach them while they play.
Who's gonna give
Maybe
the
their
back
S and
rubs
D,
though?
yeah, maybe their S&D and their hard point just go up to 11 because of this. Coach Sender in the game with them being able to be like, yo, Formal, stop being a dumbass. Go here. Maybe who knows? Stuff crazier. I no crazier things haven't happened. That would absolutely that would be the craziest
That would be the
thing
craziest.
to happen at a champs.
And it's not even close. That would be beyond insane.
But yeah, you got to give the advantage in the S&D to Minnesota simply for how good they've been up against champs teams during the course of stage 4 and stage 5. You look at the control. Minnesota's been a pretty solid control team all year against champ teams. A little less. They're like 50-50 there. And Optic been feeling a bit more comfortable, I would say, in control overall than they kind of have been since their mid-season slump. Then you go over to the hard points. Minnesota have not been a good hard point team kind of all year long. They've gotten a little bit better thanks to Standy and Major Maniac coming back into the roster. But Optic once again is, I mean, it's their Moscow really is kind of their standout hard point. And I've been saying this. I mean, their checkmate obviously is no slouch if you look at over the course of the whole season and not just in recency up against the champs teams, the teams competing at champs. But I'm gonna displace ill fate in Optic and give them the 3-2 dub over the Minnesota Rocker.
Damn. All right. I mean, that typical, but I mean, I don't know.
You think it's just that S&D is too strong for Minnesota for Optic to overcome it?
Yeah, I really do think that Minnesota could take this 3-2 over Optic. I do. I
Yeah.
seriously do.
Yeah, well, you're thinking Optic, they 100% ban Miami Search. Like 100%. Like they have to ban that up against Minnesota because Minnesota's 4-0 on that. Unless Optic somehow just pulls some wizardry off and is able to do well on Miami. That, or they just, yeah, I don't know. Because Rocker too good at that. And then you look at the raid because Minnesota's a double threat in their search and destroy up against champ teams for stage 4, stage 5. They're 4-2 on raid. Optics 0-2 on raid. I do think raid is been one of Optic's better S&D maps. I'm gonna check that over the course of the season. Yeah, no, I'm definitely wrong there. It has not been that good for them. Standoff has been surprisingly good for Optic over the course of the season. But yeah, I think with Major Maniac, once he came in, there was a bit of a shift in their S&D.
Oh,
So
for sure. And you know Mike's going to bring that to the table. Like you play with the team long enough and then you're going to figure out where you can really help, where you can make a difference. And I think that Major Maniac's finally like gotten to that point with Minnesota.
yeah, so I'm saying Miami's gone, Standoff's gone, because I think Minnesota probably doesn't want to play Optic on Standoff since they're 5-2 on it. It's either that or Express, or maybe Moscow they ban since Optic has a lot of reps on that. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, it's gonna go probably raid, and then maybe Express or Moscow. I could see Optic taking Express or Moscow up against Minnesota, in all honesty. I could definitely see Optic taking Moscow up against Minnesota.
Yeah.
And I think I could realistically see them taking Express as well. Minnesota's one win on Express was up against FaZe, and that was like around 11 where both teams were just trading defensive round, or it was like offensive or defensive rounds just over and over again until Minnesota was finally able to take a defense or something. Optics, they're 2-3 on Express, but their round record is 21-24. So they're narrowly losing Express search and destroys. So I have or they're blowing teams out and getting obliterated. Either or. I'm not 100% sure. Simply just by looking at the record. But I actually feel, looking at this now, I feel okay. I feel okay. Optic's gonna fail me. I know they are. That's just how it goes. But I feel good at least right now about my prediction. Okay.
I don't know. Like I do, but I don't. Like I mean, like I said, a lot of this depends on the fact that like this COVID craziness doesn't really like start to
Yeah.
derail things, and who knows like how long that's gonna last at champs or anything like that. So
Yeah, because let's
it's
see. Optic drops down to losers. They would face Mutineers, and then after that, they would face either Dallas or Minnesota in that elim round 2. So I mean, their path doesn't look too different, realistically. Um, it should just be a lot shorter since I don't see them winning too many matches with General and Sender subbed in.
no.
But our elimination final, we got Toronto, at least for our predictions. Toronto versus I have Toronto versus Optic. I think this is the first time we've disagreed. I have Toronto versus Optic. You have Toronto versus Minnesota. And in both of these scenarios, I think Toronto wins.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're going to see Toronto FaZe.
Optic is playing this match immediately after their prior one, or Minnesota is playing this matchup immediately
Oh,
after
well,
the prior one.
okay,
Meanwhile,
so
Toronto, they had to wait 2 hours to play this one. So they're not like entirely cold. They have played a match today, and it was against FaZe. They were probably they're probably scrimming FaZe during this Optic Minnesota matchup, potentially, if we're being quite honest. So I don't think I don't think that is going to influence this matchup too much at all. But do I finally give Optic the win over Toronto since they haven't beaten them like all season long? I'll pass it off to you. Since you have Toronto, Minnesota, who are you going with and why?
I'd like to see Toronto, seriously. And
This will be the second time they faced off, at least in our current bracket predictions.
Part of me thinks they will, but I mean, Minnesota has just been playing so well. Honestly, I want to give it 3-2 Minnesota.
3-2 Minnesota?
Yeah.
Going with the recency?
I'm going with the recency. They beat Dallas. They'll beat Optic at that point. Like, I mean,
Minnesota just takes down the top 4 to win champs.
I don't think they win champs.
You would have had them take down the top 5 because you would have had them beat Subliners, or I guess you would have had them beat Dallas, then Subliners, and then Optic, and then now Toronto. The last one they need to be FaZe.
Yeah, but they wouldn't. They aren't going to be FaZe.
You're saying Minnesota 3-2 over Toronto?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna say Toronto beat Optic 3-2. Yeah, that is a Optic could very well take that series. Maybe not. I don't know. Dude, if Optic was just better at S&D, they would actually be a really good team. But it's just their S&D against once they lost their checkmate S&D, they just went down so hard because they need another map, but they don't really have one. Like Standoff kind of became that, but not to the level that checkmate was.
Yeah, not to mention that I think there's other teams that play Standoff way better than Optic does. Like, I mean, I think that Toronto plays better than Optic. FaZe, that's an interesting one.
Does not play standoff.
Yeah, FaZe is not very good at standoff.
They're not good at standoff. They're not that good at express. Both of those maps that got added mid-season, they have not been the best on. Which could definitely be some weaknesses to look at once we get to champs, the championship. So I'm gonna have Toronto beat Optic 3-2. Optic's never come in second place at a champs. They've always come in third or eighth. That's kind of how it goes. Well, they can't come in eighth at this champs, so they got to come in third. So here's your third place finish, Optic. Congratulations, you did it again. Forever third, Savage. Toronto going on to face Atlanta FaZe in the championship, best of 9, and it's happening. It's the only match happening on Sunday. So there's no more of they got to play some matches earlier in the day. They're all warmed up. We're cold, yada, yada, yada. No, both of you had not a full day to prepare for this match, but you both are playing it fresh hands on Sunday. Best of 9. Who's taking it? I, like the whole season, am going to have to give it to Atlanta FaZe.
Yeah, I'm going with FaZe. FaZe 6-2.
6-2. Where do you get
or 5-2? 5-2. I'm blasted.
6-2. They beat him twice on a map. It was insane.
They win the map one, but then it gets turned over for some reason. I don't know. 5-2. 5-2 FaZe.
So
Smoke
in
them.
our predictions, FaZe is going to have the veto advantage. So they're going to get to pick which S&D map they don't play, and they're going to be able to pick which control map they don't play. And then each team will get to ban a hard point. So I don't think the hard point ban is going to play too much into kind of affecting the match score. FaZe probably going to ban like Garrison or Checkmate. I'm thinking more likely, which is more likely actually, because I'm looking at kind of their recency, but I'm looking at their overall. Actually, maybe they'll ban Apocalypse. FaZe is 3-0 on Apocalypse though. When do they get good at that map? That's interesting. Yeah, not too sure how the hardpoint beaters are going to go, to be completely honest.
I don't think it really matters, honestly.
No?
No.
Is FaZe just like a better version of Toronto Ultra, you feel?
FaZe is not modeled after any team. They play the game explicitly different than just about everybody out there. Like Simp and Abizi are able to do whatever they want on the map. And Celium and Arcades, all they have to do is play along. FaZe is like the 96-97 Bulls right now. They just
Okay.
they have that momentum right now. They're disgusting, like each of them individually. I don't think they're also onliners. I really do think that they just took a week off during Major 5 because they could. They studied up, they watched VOD. There's literally videos of them watching VOD instead of practicing. Like, you know, so I mean, it's like it should be a no-brainer. Just how they performed all season. They got stats like nobody else. If FaZe doesn't win this, then I will be shocked.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's going to be a 5-3. A little more competitive,
Yeah, that's fair.
Not going all the way to that 9th game, but at least going to game 8, gotta make it enjoyable to watch.
Sure,
So
sure.
I'll give it to FaZe in the end, though. They've been the better team the majority of the time. And so you can kind of toss stats and everything out the window. I mean, because if you're looking at stats for this matchup, FaZe just on paper been the best team all year, hands down.
Yeah.
For now, you know what? We should do some crazy predictions, the upset predictions. The actual what's going to happen. First round, Optic, they don't have Scump and Envoy. Subliners, they 3-1 them. Then Optic, they lose to Mutineers. They're out. 8th place. Actually, yeah, that's how they get that 7th, 8th. They can get 7th, 8th. It's possible. Oh no. They get the 7th, 8th. Dallas, they beat Minnesota. Minnesota dropped down. Minnesota lose to the Thieves, since that seems like a team they cannot beat for some reason. They haven't been able to beat the Thieves like all season long, I think. I don't think they've beaten them at all this season. They get obliterated on Moscow, 100-point clubbed again, because that happens every time they play there. They move on. Or Thieves move on. Who would Thieves play? Let's see. New York, they lose to FaZe, obviously, given there. So Thieves versus New York. New York beat Thieves game 5. Crazy. Round 11. Hydra. World Star Slasher. Slasher retires. Goes home. Becomes an actual engineer and still goes on Twitter to complain about shit. Uh, Florida Mutineers, they beat Optics, so they move on. They're facing who are they facing? They're facing Dallas, because Dallas lost to Toronto, because Cammy is apparently the best player in the league, so says Crim6. Dallas, they beat Florida because Florida is not actually a good team. Dallas move on to face New York. Dallas lose to New York because Clayster hype squad. New York move on to face Toronto because Toronto lost to FaZe. New York beat Toronto because Toronto's so heartbroken from that earlier loss. Cammy lost full. And so it's going to be New York versus FaZe in the grand finals. And FaZe is Simp's dad, so he wins it. Bam. There's your champs.
What?
There's some logic in there.
I just
There's
don't see any of it. That's tough.
See, that's what I think people would prefer over the analytical point of view. So that's the real uncut champs predictions. New York wins it. The Fiji trip paid off. And now he's going to take another one.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, but realistically, both of us were predicting Atlanta versus Toronto grand final. I'm actually going to be pretty surprised if that is what happens, simply because champs is champs and crazy stuff happens. But both of us are predicting Atlanta FaZe wins in the end. And I believe that's going to be it for this episode. This is potentially the last episode. I haven't decided 100% yet, but if you want to see more episodes, tell me you do in the comments down below, or like the video, because more than likely this is the last episode, episode 46, the last one of just another esports podcast. Maybe we'll throw one up sometime, maybe 4, just to get to 50, and then end it, but who knows. In all likeliness, this is the last episode. So I hope you guys all enjoyed listening to these episodes. And I can't really say we'll see you next time, since I don't know if this is the
The
last one or
end.
not.
The
But
end.
it's the end. It's the end. But, I hope you guys all have a fantastic champs weekend. It's bound to be crazy. I mean, there's a live crowd. It's on LAN. Craziness is bound to happen.
Oh, for
But
sure.
that is going to be it from us. I will not see you next time. Hope you guys all enjoy yourselves. Goodbye.
Yeah. Later.